Thank you so much for staying with us. The president, President Bola Tinubu, made that commitment some time ago, talking about Nigeria becoming a $1 trillion economy, that it is possible for us to do it. I hear the possibility. In fact, I also remember the late President Buhari saying that it is possible for Nigeria to pull 100 million people, 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over 10 years. This was in 2018. This is 2023. That's about how many years now from that target, if we ever were chasing it? Maybe about 3 years from now. I'm not sure that has gotten off the ground. We tried to get the government of the day to speak to it, but not quite. The challenge is whether or not there was a plan after that statement was made. One of the things we have also found out over time is that when there is a presidential pronouncement, most of the time, there is no follow-up to it. So when President Tinubu made that pronouncement, when he made that promise, when he made that, I don't know, should I say some kind of forecast that Nigeria has the potential to become a $1 trillion economy, the question we want to ask is, what's the plan? Well, two gentlemen joined us this morning to have this conversation about the pursuit of a $1 trillion economy in Nigeria. Dr. Ogbenga Adeoye is here. He's a chartered accountant. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Also joining us in our Abuja studio is the Special Advisor on Economic Affairs in the Office of the Vice President, Dr. Tokwe Fashua. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Fashua.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Let me ask you first, Dr. Fashua, what's the background that you can say, maybe we should ask you, first of all, what's the background to that statement about Nigeria becoming a $1 trillion economy? Was it just a pronouncement, or is there a plan towards it? Is this something that can be achieved in the life of this administration, be it just 4 years or 8 years? Is there a plan to sustain it and all those conversations?
Well, thank you very much. It wasn't a mere pronouncement. It wasn't something the president woke up one day and just decided that it was a nice thing to say. As a matter of fact, it's inside the campaign document. There's a campaign promise. So this will date back to perhaps 2022 when the campaigns were heating up and campaign documents were being put together. So, however, so that's the thing. And of course, there is a plan. It's just that for people to be able to follow up on that plan is a bit difficult because there are many things that need to be done. Many of which have been done already, in order to get to that point. Now, the other thing I'll quickly tell you, before looking at those things that have been done, which are likely to power the economy up to let's say, first of all, we need to have a double-digit growth. The president also, in the campaigns and part of the campaign document, what we promised was double-digit growth. However, they say you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. According to one of the former mayors of New York. So the thing is, when you now get to government, of course, there are a few realities that you need to clear. And I think the president has been very astute in doing the right thing, which are the the reforms that have been done. So first of all, the thing I need to let you know is if we say we want to achieve a $1 trillion economy as an aspiration, what we're saying is, in essence, that, look, we're going to challenge ourselves to do the right thing and to get the economy growing at a faster clip with a lot more productivity on the part of everybody, every individual, every household, every company, in Nigeria, and even at the public sector level. If we are able to achieve 700 out of 1 trillion, I think that's a pass mark. Even if what we do was $600 billion, out of that, it is a pass mark. Now, so let's understand that look, it's just like budgeting and planning. When you plan, you needn't achieve 100% of your plan, but you challenge yourself by setting very high standards and very high, limits. And then, like they say, and like I always try to repeat, they say those who aim for the skies may sometimes find themselves among the stars. If you don't aim, you're never going to achieve. What many people unfortunately do these days is they are unable to imagine a new Nigeria, unable to imagine a Nigeria that works. And all of the rhetoric and narrative that they are pushing is all about, that same mediocrity, where we're coming from. We can't get past that. And I keep telling them Nigeria will change and advance even in spite of Nigerians and in spite of our cynicism. I mean, just yesterday, inflation went down to 21.8% from 22.22%. The aim is to get to 15%. Perhaps we could even do more. The reason why we're not, moving faster is partly cultural. The fact that, and of course, partly because the economy at the stage of development that we are, a lot of people have taken advantage of. It's a seller's market, especially, in terms of food, in terms of the things that really, really matter to people, the basic items. People have dictated the price. People have tried to take advantage and make billions and so on. But, even in spite of them, at some point in time, inflation will slow down. So Mr. President has done some of the critical reforms that most other governments in this country have not been able to do. Reforms around petroleum. You can see a new economy is created around petroleum sector in this country. A new sector, almost a new sector. Nigeria becoming a net exporter of refined, and at some point, a net importer of crude. It's unbelievable the way things have totally turned around. But that's petroleum sector. New players there, new oil servicing companies, Nigerian companies taking over, Nigerian indigenous companies producing 50% of our crude oil. And of course, now we're getting to 1.8 million barrels a day, including condensates. By the end of the year, we hope to get to 2 million. That's petroleum sector. You can see the reforms around the Naira, stability in the Naira. A lot of shenanigans that used to be played around the Naira. The arbitrage has disappeared. The arbitrage that was up as much as 50% at some point, when people can get money from central bank and so on.
Dr. Fashaw,
that has disappeared.
all of that is well understood.
Let me land on this, Ayo, if you don't mind. Let me land on this. Okay, so you can see the tectonic changes that have happened in the economy. That look, so what see, like they say about the bamboo tree, the Chinese bamboo tree. Sometimes you plant and for 5 years you are watering this bamboo tree and you think that nothing is going to happen, and then boom, and every day is growing by 5 meters in a day. So I think that's what we're doing. I mentioned those two key reforms. There's the tax reform that's kicking in 2026 January. There's also even recent statement by a decision of the Federal Executive Council and of course the National Economic Council around taking development to the rural areas, a word-based development system that's going to touch at least 20 million people in this economy. So you see, so the thing is this: if you want to be strategic, when you take over a government such as this in an economy that has so much latitude for growth and for change, you have to do the right thing by setting the standards and then watching it grow. So like the bamboo tree, I believe that the Nigerian economy is going to grow at double digits at some point in time. Let's look at what happens in 2026 with the right attitude from Nigerians. And some of us are here to ensure we counter.
There are a number of things. Thank you, Dr. Fashaw. There are some things we cannot. There are some things we cannot really legislate. Let me ask you, Dr. Adeoye. There are economists such as yourself who have said that this is just an ambition of the federal government. Right now, according to information available even from the presidency, based on the rebasing of Nigeria's economy, we are valued something in the region of $243.55 billion. We're targeting $1 trillion. Is it just a pipe dream?
Okay. When you talk about a $1 trillion economy, about 2-3 years ago, I was in Dallas. And then I had a discussion with a senior friend, a medical doctor. And then he said, the only way forward for Nigeria is for them to open the economy. And then I began to do a research. And in my research, I came up with about 9 strategies to have a robust economy. And I target P septics. P and then hyphen septics. The first thing that you must address is not just, you can have a projection and say, this is where I'm going. But actually, the focus should be on this strategy that I want to mention. Number one, the P there talks about power, electricity. Every other thing you say about development without addressing power becomes a mere statement. And I can tell you, the cost of power from the grid is about 25% of what it would be if you have to buy diesel to power it. So that's P number one. The septics, S there, is security. If you don't have security, you cannot do anything. In fact, the people, I recall I was a debt recovery agent for a commercial bank in Nigeria. About a few years ago, there are certain states in the country we couldn't go. I'm in Nigeria. I couldn't fly to some states at that time. The same way it will apply to a foreign investor who feels, I'm not going to go to that place. So our attention should focus on those variables. One, power. Second, security. The E there is exchange rate. Now, whether we argue from today till tomorrow, and don't forget, Tope Fasua is a friend, and he has spoken as a marketer, and I give it to him the way he has spoken. He's part of government. Some of us are outside government, but indirectly we're also part of government, and so we need to just advise on the way forward. Exchange rate is a factor that determines who you are as a country and how your country is. Now, if a country has the dollar exchanging at 2,000 or 1.5 in his own country, you will not compare with another country that's exchanging at 3 or 10 or 7 like China. And I'll give you a practical example. In 2022, there was an investment program I was involved in as a consultant. And then the entire transaction was $300,000. And then everybody felt, okay, Nigerians can do this. And it came, around that time, it was between 495 to a maximum of 500 at the black market, which means 150 million naira was to solve that problem. As of today, looking at 1,500 exchange rate is going to cost 450 million from 150. Now, if you look at that alone, if those investors do not have increase in their naira revenue, there's no way they can raise that 450. So that's addressed. I've talked about the first P, power, S, security, E, exchange rate. The fourth one is political stability. And that's where I quarrel with people talking around more like you want to remove the government in power. You know, the kind of speech you hear, oh, we are not happy with this. You cannot remove a democratically elected government through other means other than the same process. And so when you have a political stability in your country, then you will have growth. So part of what government must do is to ensure we have a political system that allows continuity, and then you're able to hand over to another government. Now, after that, I said perceptics. So the T there address tax policy. I'm glad with what our daily team has done. Some of us at the background, we were part of it. But again, the exercise will be in futility if they do not quickly call state government to order. As early as yesterday, I still got a call from a client who said, some guys are here talking about consumption tax. The right thing for state government to do immediately is to have repealed the consumption tax laws, because it amounts to double taxation when you pay value-added tax. And don't forget, we have given extra 5% to state government in exchange for that removal or repealing of those laws. So we need to now look at the federating unit, not focusing on the federal government alone. So you have the state government not willing or deliberately not acting as they ought to act. And this is a time to call all the House of Assemblies and the governors in Nigeria to order. Stop all this moving around with consumption tax demand. We've given you extra 5%. Since Tinubu came to power, the sharing was about 600 billion before. Since he got to power, it has been above 1 trillion. So you have increase in revenue, so you must not then become a problem to the citizens that are investing. And like my pastor will say, you cannot build your joy on another man's sorrow and expect that joy to last. The people, they will rebel against it. So you cannot then begin to do things that undermine what the president is doing. So I've spoken about that. Tax policy. The idea is interest rate. The July meeting set MPR at 27.5. And then you have the cash reserve ratio at 50%. You have liquidity ratio at 30%. And then you have the asymmetric band at plus 500 points and then minus 100 points. That look like economic jargons to those who don't understand monetary policy. There is no way you can lend to anybody in your country at 35, 40%, 50% in some cases, and expect that economy to grow. Among the citizens that are investing, they will not want to invest. Only foreigners who have foreign funds will be able to come. And let me give you an example. If you have a 1-year moratorium and you are giving 100 million naira to do business, let's say pure working capital, and then you are paying about 50% interest at the end of the year, you must make profit above 50% for you to be able to pay. Now, how are you going to achieve that? If you make less than 50%, it means you will be draining your capital. So we need to look at interest rate critically. Of course, there is an argument that, oh, inflation is at 24.5, and so government is putting interest rate above it so that people can bring money. What you are encouraging is for people to be idle and say, look, I better not invest in production. I better not invest in creating jobs. Let me just put my money in the bank so I can get 20 or 20-something%. And that's what is happening to a lot of big guys in Nigeria. Mention among the politicians, mention maybe 10 of them, from the National Assembly to governors that have factories that employ 1,500, 100 people in Nigeria. And the reason is not far-fetched. It's simply because it pays you better to put your money in the bank. So government need to look at interest rate as a matter of urgency. So I said P-septics. C is corruption. Corruption is what has led us to where we are from 1960. It's not as if government is not doing anything. It's not as if government is not planning to do road. It's not as if they are not building hospital. But all of us that are in private sector, go and check the cost of building your house. I don't know where your house is, but averagely, if you spend 100 million to build your house, if government want to build that type of house, it's going to be close to 1 billion. So it's a problem, and it has become like a normal trend. So government needs to do that. Before you do any project, get private sector to give you an idea. If we are doing this, this is what the cost is going to be. Now, the S there is the social system in the country. I bet you where people are not happy, there is no party happening, no event, there's what we call bulk consumption. Everything about the economy is about consumption. In fact, we have a Yoruba proverb that says, "Ẹni tó ń jẹ sàárà, lọ̀gá ẹni tó ń sè." It means that the consumer is the master of the producer. In fact, your production is anchored on consumption, because if there is no demand, there is not going to be supply. So the social system, people must be able to say, what we do in Africa, like we do Ashwebi, we do party here and there, birthday. In fact, I have people who want to, do remembrance, social activity. There must not be restriction of movement of people people gathering together.
But at the end of the day, all of those things,
I'm
actually, glad that, well, this is your septic. Let me first of all ask, Dr. Fashua.
And my Perceptics has a copyright. Anybody who copy it
Dr.
will be sued.
I know that you heard him, and I know you were listening to a bit of the things that he said. But what are your thoughts on that strategy? Particularly because I know it would seem like some of them sound a little disjointed, while some are things that the federal government can do. He's spoken, for instance, about the role or the partnership or synergy of the federal government with the states, or the state governments with the federal government. I've asked that question severally. It would seem like the president, the presidency, the federal government, the executive arm of the federal government in particular, is dancing solo, dancing a solo ballet. No one else is dancing with you. If the state governments are not cooperating, if the state governments are not aligning with the issues that the federal government is raising, then how do we go from here? It raises the question of communication or collaboration, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. The Taiwo Committee, of which I'm part as well, we also incorporated the opinions of the states, but there are also state-level laws that need to be worked on in order for everything to align. And I think that is the next level now, as things stand. And, of course, the gentleman, Dr. Adeoye, made a very, very germane point regarding the fact that a lot of the states are getting ×3 in Naira what they used to get. And of course, we're spending Naira, spending locally. There are advantages that we get. So nobody should run around and say, oh, the money in dollar terms is a lot less. We know it's a lot less in dollar terms. But look, we're talking about you paying your staff, the teachers that work at the state level, doing local infrastructure, which many of the states have started to do. So it's not everything about dollar, and all of that, So, yeah, it's time for them to kick in. In fact, yes, like Dr. Adeoye said, I also was in Lagos, and I was in a restaurant where they also took consumption tax. And I was wondering, what's the point of taking consumption tax? And I was telling my colleague that we went there together, I said, I don't think this money will be remitted at that level. I mean, it just opens up customers and individuals to further taxation, double taxation, and all of that. So I actually do agree with most of what Dr. Adeoye has said. Of course, infrastructure, electricity, key, germane. But however, the play is no longer about diesel versus greed. The play is now about alternative energy versus greed. And I've been reading many articles where many big companies have started to move away from the grid into alternative energy. It's looking like, look, alternative is the future. And of course, my thought would be that at some level, government will also come out with a strategy on alternative energy, which we would add to what is done by the grid, and we'll move away from this rhetoric of 5,800 megawatts, 6,000 megawatts, and so on. We should be able to post 20, 30,000 megawatts in a short while. So I agree with that. I disagree with him on the exchange rate. What he described was a scenario where the exchange rate shifted on a transaction. However, in a country like, if I remember, maybe Indonesia, they're doing like 21,000 to the dollar, and of course, it's a much larger economy. It's $1 trillion economy. They're doing better than we are doing in Nigeria and so on. And you see, the issue is relativity. So really, the truth is that if you look at the current scenario on exchange rate in Nigeria now, it's encouraging a lot of local production and local effort. If you look at the three of us speaking on this program now, we're wearing native products and so on that were sewn in Nigeria, even if the materials were not made in Nigeria, the caps we are wearing are made in Nigeria. People are looking. In fact, Nigerian fashion among the young people, this local trouser that they wear now, made in with Asho and Co, it has gone international. Because there's that advantage. Of course, I keep talking about the cocoa play. Something great is happening in Nigeria. And Nigerian cocoa, farmers and of course middlemen inclusive, and so we're able to make ×4 what they made from 2023 to 2024, because of course the price of cocoa went up times 2 times 3, but of course production also went up.
Dr. Fasho, I hear you loud and clear, but if I could just a second, just a second. I'm coming somewhere, and I'd like you to speak to it. Look, Dr. Adeoye praised you for doing a wonderful marketing job. But I think, one thing that people want to hear is, just a second, how does this translate into the living standards of the people on a sustainable basis? The former Minister of Finance had that conversation with the president and came out and said, look, we need to build safety. Oh, praise the president for the fantastic job he's doing. But the reforms are biting. It's like someone who had, an open wound and the person goes into surgery. It's going to be painful. But at the time that pain, that the fellow is suffering that pain, what's the respite the person can get while the healing is on? That, I think, is what is important here. Everybody wants what the president is talking about, a $1 trillion economy. That's not to say that all of the corruption issues are dealt with and all. What are the things that Nigeria must do on a sustainable basis? Because I don't think it is possible for this government to achieve, just a second, for this government to achieve that $1 trillion economy. But the government can set the path for everyone else to follow.
We'll give it a shot.
What must happen on a sustainable basis? It cannot only be the federal government. The states have to play a role. What must happen for Nigeria to get to that place?
Ayo, that's all we're talking about here. Even though, let's not detract from the subject of the day, which is about the 1 trillion. Of course, the issue of trickle down is a clear and present issue. And again, what was I was talking about cocoa farmers. They're farmers, they're Nigerians, they live in the rural areas, they made good money, and they're going to make even more money this year than they did last year. We're looking at 500,000 metric tons this year. They're farmers. For those who have left those rural areas and headed for Lagos because they believe that there's more money in Lagos, there's urban poverty that's dealing with people, and of course those are the people on social media who can make those, comments that things are totally bad. It's not totally bad for everybody. People are doing cashew, people are doing sesame, people are doing hibiscus, people are doing a lot at the rural level. So part of what, in order to answer your question, the key thing that must be done has been done in terms of the key policies, including the tax policy that actually excludes those who are earning the least in Nigeria, including businesses that are doing turnovers of 4 million per month and below from taxes. I think that the federal government has done a number of things. Of course, remember that, look, you're not going to be able to do 100% of what needs to be done. That's not governance. I mentioned earlier on, you campaign in prose, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. So you're not going to be able to do everything. Let me tell you, if we're talking about increasing GDP and all of that, down to the production function and the fact that, look, what are the things that creates productivity? I wrote an article in Premium Times recently, and also I think the Cable, let's have a rethink about what they call the factors of production, the so-called land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Let's extend it and begin to think of it. What about information, data, technology, knowledge? Even artificial intelligence, even time. Those are also factors that we need to consider that can actually push people forward. And I have also told you some of the things that the government is even taking to the rural level, to the world level, to say, look, how can we cause that productivity to come up from the ground up in a way that will be tectonic, that will be, like the so-called Albert Einstein's E is equal to MC squared. In that kind of manner that will actually boom the economy, and that's why we're here.
Okay.
So there's a discussion about, whether it's trickling down. A lot of the trickle down, even I mentioned, I've been on your show, I think maybe another host, talking about infrastructure and the impact on multidimensional poverty. If multidimensional poverty is described as, a people's, how close a people are to infrastructure, basic infrastructure like roads, like schools, like health centers, And, you know, we keep spending on this every year, creating new roads, patching up old roads, new primary health care centers and so on, but we seem not to be measuring. So let me land on this, that I think that one of the critical issues we have is a data problem. That we're not actually capturing our data properly to say that, look, this is what we have been able to achieve. And I've actually proposed that we need to look, this is what we have been able to achieve. And I've actually proposed that we need to relaunch a poverty eradication, targeted poverty eradication program that will clearly measure and say this number of people have been taken away from poverty as a result of the interventions of government, as a result of the creation of infrastructure, as a result of the efforts, beyond just going to give them money. Because again, the World Bank, IMF will say, we need to give cash handouts to people, which is okay. For
one would be asking the question, Dr. Fashua, who is supposed to gather that data, if not the federal government itself? If you get my point, this data should come from the institutions of government. This should come from the statistician general. Just yesterday, we had a conversation with the CEO of Nelfon. He gave us real data of persons and money. So it is the agencies of government, be it federal or state, that are supposed to come up with this data. But we'll come back to that one. One of the things that I want to ask you, Dr. I'm coming back to you, Dr. Fasha. I'm coming back to you, Dr. Fasha. I'll come back to you. One of the issues that I want you to respond to now is, perhaps the federal government has some distractions that I'd like you to speak to. What are the things that are likely to, that are in the way, not likely, that are hindering the expeditious progress of Nigeria towards this $1 trillion economy? Nigeria is growing now at X% according to federal government data, but we must grow at certain double digits level if we are going to get to this $1 trillion economy within a particular time. What, in your opinion, are the distractions of government? What are the challenges that government may be unwilling to speak to? And how significant is this federal states dichotomy, if there is such a thing?
So let me speak first about the distraction. Mr. President needs to act speedily on certain things. Security being tackled by sending soldiers, we call it kinetic operation. It's not the only way. Who are the people behind it? Because if people hear, oh, bomb blast in Sokoto, 20 people kidnapped in Benue, villages destroyed, people get scared. In fact, when we go out of the country, people look at us and say, oh, your skin is intact. They think they've killed all of us in the country. So, and that's very bad. Like you said, bad news, travel fast. Just pockets of problems here and there. If I were to be the president, you need to identify the politicians that are behind these killings, kidnapping, security crisis, and deal with them appropriately without having any sacred cow. That's point number one. Number two is that the government needs to declare a state of emergency on certain infrastructure, that are complementary. Take, for instance, transportation. You cannot travel from Shagamu to Ijebu-Ode in the night. The potholes on that road, they're terrible. That's my state. So, and I used to say... So we
understand that the roads are already being repaired.
Yes, I mean, maybe because we are making noise here and there. And I used to say that the president cannot do everything. The volume of money going to state government since 2023 that he came on board is enormous. What are they doing with it? So we need to develop a kind of policy that is not just about doing budget. We need to formulate policy and say, these are the things that you have to do. And so budget must go along that line. Not state government coming up with projects that suit them, that we allow for leakages. We must be able to say, for example, in my state, we have 20 local governments. We must be able to say, healthcare system in all the local government, primary healthcare center. Yes, federal government play a part. We look at transportation. What is wrong in having a rail line, apart from the federal one, connecting the local governments together? These things are not rocket science. And if you go to Ethiopia, you go to China, you go to other places, you see that we can actually afford some of these things at state level. So the state government need to be directed what they need to do.
Can I ask you a question?
Tax
my apologies. Can I ask you a quick question on that state government thing? There's this thing this multilateral organization does, the AFDB, particularly concerning this Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones project. Now, it's some kind of conditional disbursement that if you don't, you only get paid for every milestone. Or you've bought the table, okay, get the money for the next one. Or you bought the chair, oh, get the money for the next one. Do you think it is something that the Federation can agree to, particularly for the states?
Oh, of course.
Do you think that will ever...
It's not only to agree on paper, to have task force monitoring that the right thing is done. And thank God for social media. So you can say, oh, we have disbursed X amount to so states. What have they been able to do? And then nothing is happening. And this project is not moving forward because the AFDB, they are not bringing funds because you have not done what you promised to do. So the federal government, as the father of the state, let me put it that way, need to monitor the children and ensure they are not misbehaving, because there's a lot of misbehavior across the country. So, but citizens carry all the blame on the president, whereas the government that is closer to you, they are the people to be blamed.
Okay. Well, this message is from Festus Akinwe, who says it's doable for Nigeria to achieve $1 trillion economy, but it's not going to be easy. We need constant electricity, change our youths in productive activities, security, double-digit growth in our GDP, ongoing reforms and resilience to achieve this monumental goal. Tola seems to agree and says 9 items needed for functioning world-level development. Office of the Citizens, water treatment and supply, primary and secondary schools, primary healthcare center, public housing, electricity, police station, library, polling station, a park garden, and so on. You know, Dr. Fasha, I see that these issues are all on what one can call the concurrent lists, not the exclusive list. It's something that every state government ought to be able to do. I still go back, and forgive me for doing that, to the issue of whether or not something that Dr. Ade also said now. Do you think it's advisable to have some kind of monitoring system to put the feet of the state governments to the fire, that you only get disbursements for every milestone you achieve in your state? Do you think it is something that can be considered as a nation, not just at the federal level, but as a federation?
Well, you'll have to change major laws to achieve that. Maybe there are some kind of funds that you can use that kind of idea for, but for general funds that are constitutionally established, they will come after the federal government because they will talk about separation of power. We live in a federation. Some of the states already complain so much about federal government interference. They want to have their... And of course, remember that not all the states are APC states. Some of the states are opposition states as well, who just want their money and they don't want you to pry. However, this is where the the media comes in, including social media, including CSOs and all these kind of organizations like yours. So in building a country, it's not only government people that build a country, it's everybody and every opinion that builds a country. You know, when the media takes pot shots at government and says things that are not very palatable to government, it's all part of nation building. It also puts the government on edge and, allows us to take the best decisions at every point in time. But I'll quickly say, the last discussion we had, we're talking about data, and I want to disabuse your mind that data is, like I said, data is the new money, the new crude oil, the new everything. Nigeria hasn't taken data serious that much. Data is not just a government thing. Data is not just what government does. It's like, Channels is a data company. Ayo is a data accumulator, data provider as well. So the more we take data serious, right now we seem to be buying even our own data we buy from abroad. We pay top money. So we need to have that immense data focus. Let's assume that everything the MBS does, they've done it all, there's nothing that can be done. We can interact with the MBS. They brought out the rebasing of the economy a couple of weeks back, you know, we can continue to interact with them to provide more insight for them and say, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? In order to have a better, you know, data, product or outcome. And I'll say that, look, what I'm also saying is that we in government are more data focused. You're going to be seeing a lot more innovation around the data space. You know, again, so back to the issue of productivity, like I said before, please, if we want to grow productivity, let everybody has to be on point, you know, not only what the government will do, but beyond the issue of combining land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, which is an 1800 definition in the time of Adam Smith and David Ricardo and all of those people. Now we're looking at what can we do with you can generate money just by using data, by manipulating data, by having the right information, because productivity is about how much money you're able to generate. The GDP of a country is the goods and the value in naira or in dollar of the goods and services produced in that country in a given year. So everybody must be on point. But again, you know, we have a huge informal economy. It's still huge. A black economy where nobody knows what's going on in there. All of that must be captured in order for us to realize the real economy.
All right, Dr. Fasha, I want to ask you. I want to ask you one question as we wind down on this conversation. And please, I'm not trying to trap. You are an economist and you've done this for years. Realistically speaking, speak as someone who, well, in government, but someone who wants to instill some confidence. How long do you think it can take Nigeria to achieve this wonderful $1 trillion economy? And what are the conditions that need to be met very, very urgently for us to be able to achieve that?
Okay, well, I'd say that I'll take on board some of what Dr. Adey has said. Most of what he has said are valid issues, corruption and all of that, you know. Even though when I talk about corruption, I remember a man called one of the mayors of New York in the 1800s, and that's a very corrupt guy, you know, I think I forget his name now, you know, but he was a very corrupt person, but he was the one that did most of the deals for some of those bridges in New York, and also the creation of what's called Manhattan today, those skyscrapers and so on. So we know what all the issues are. If you ask me about the timing, we have set a 2030 timeline on it. How far can we go? You know, if most people cooperate and we can put in some positivism in this economy, you know, in order to get to that point between now and 2030, we're talking about 30% growth year on year. Okay, so that's a bit of a stretch. You know, maybe in order to, if you're looking at 1 trillion, maybe we'd set maybe 2033, 2035, thereabout, of positive growth. You know, and of course, a good transitioning from one government to the other.
You've given me the answer that I want, Dr. Fasha, because I'm out of time already. Dr. Adey, do you agree?
Yes.
Do you see that being possible?
Well, it's possible, but the caution should be, let the growth not be among the 5% big entities. Otherwise, you won't have the effect down the line.
The trickle-down effect that you spoke about earlier.
So the growth has to be that all the MSME, small and medium-scale enterprises, individuals who are involved in business, they are able to grow and become part of this $1 trillion economy.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Olugbenga Adeoye is a chartered accountant and economist. We also have had Dr. Tope Fasha, who is Special Advisor on Economic Affairs in the Office of the Vice President. Thank you so much for your time this morning, gentlemen. Now, when we return, we want to talk about the Canadian court and the terror tag. Do stay with us. Thank you, sir.